I wanted to ask you about mental health because this is something that I have heard in your songs, and then you've also written about it on social media. So dealing with mental health issues has been a theme of many of your songs. And you've been open about the fact that you have Tourette's syndrome, OCD, ADHD, and have also battled depression and anxiety at different points in time.
Yes.
So would you mind giving me and the audience a little background about Tourette's and OCD, because these are definitely two conditions that get shown a lot in popular media, like on TV shows and movies and stuff. But I doubt that they're very accurate because it always seems very extreme.
Right.
So could you just give us a little bit of information and background?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to say that maybe those portrayals are accurate, but there's also like way more to it than that, because they usually pick these extreme cases of Tourette's and stuff. So people get this stereotype or how OCD is just people that need to clean or something, but it's like way more than that. Cause like if you're watching this, like you may have seen me like move my face a little bit or something, but other than that, like I'm not screaming and like swearing like you would see most popular displays of Tourette's be. So there are varying degrees of Tourette's, of course, like there is in anything. I guess I'll just talk about my experience. So when I was 5, I was diagnosed with a tic, and a tic is any motor or physical action, like vocal or physical, exertion of anything. So mine was a cough. Like I would just cough on purpose. And, the doctors went through a lot of why is he coughing so much? I just cough all day. And they narrowed that down to diagnosing me with a tic. And then Tourette's is diagnosed when you have many different kinds of tics, or like if you have several vocal and physical tics, instead of just having a tic, now you then have Tourette's, you know what I mean? So I think lots of people have tics. I think that's actually quite common. Like they might do a weird thing, like move their eyebrow or something like that. But once it goes beyond that and it's more, then it becomes Tourette's. So when I was 13 is when I was diagnosed with Tourette's. And yeah, so like luckily I have the severity of my case is that I can pretend to be normal if I absolutely need to. And that's like the biggest misconception, because people are like, well, like if you have Tourette's, like, can't you just not do anything about it? And like, what do you mean you can be normal? Then you don't have Tourette's, right? But like for me, I can, with a lot of mental energy, I can suppress most of my tics. And like, even right now, I get a lot of the tics come out especially when I'm talking about Tourette's. So like, as of right now, I'm like moving my feet a lot, and I've been playing with this fidget spinner the whole time. So what I'm doing right now is kind of filtering my tics into other movements the best I can. And when I'm doing work that involves standing or moving or doing something physical or rapping or talking, then it's kind of filtering out the energy of those suppressions and it kind of releasing it in its own way. So that's why school was so hard for me. And when I have to sit here and not talk and not move and just like watch somebody and try to soak up their information, that's when it gets really hard for me. And so it's basically just physically and mentally exhausting to be trying to do something when some of my brain is telling me to like do something weird, like move like this or whatever, like anything, like make a sound or move your face. And when you're trying to spend all our energy to not do that, it's really hard and distracting. So sometimes I'm just like, when I'm by myself, there are times where I look exactly like the stereotypical like Tourette's dude that's like going nuts, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm by myself, so I'm like, I don't need to waste my energy to suppress this. I can just let it go and it'll be fine. And some, you know, my family members and people that have been close to me have seen that. Yeah. So I don't know how deep we want to go into this, but
no, I think that's a good coverage of the overall, like, about the condition. Cause, I did know that there are levels of it. But I didn't know much. So I think it's interesting, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
So how much has music then been an outlet to channel any difficulties that you have with either Tourette's or other things?
Yeah, so music, that was pretty much the reason I started writing, is when I had, you know, battling with the anxiety and that whole side of things, mental health. It was always like an outlet for me to just write down, like, I'm feeling this way, and it's like I need to turn it into something, you know, get the energy out. So lots of my lyrics have been about that, or motivated by the negativity. And that's how it started. And yeah, then it was like a coping mechanism for many years, and then it became a hobby, and then now it's something that I do professionally, that I'm pursuing. And still to this day, like, if I'm experiencing some negativity or mental health, like when I'm in really dark places is when I'm the most creative. One thing I think is a really beautiful thing about music and my experience with it is that when I'm feeling a type of way that's definitely not good, and negativity is consuming me, in that negativity, I can put myself in a creative space to feel these feelings and write them down in the form of music, and then create that into an actual song that can then be shown to people who can listen to it in a positive way. Like, whether the song is negative itself, when you're listening to music, like, you're enjoying it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's become a tangible thing that is good from the negativity that I feel inside me. So that, like, really is just awesome to me, that it's like, I feel this way and, like, it sucks and it's hard. But when I look back on songs that I've made that other people say, like, yo, this song helped me, man, or like, this is awesome. Like, any, even just people listening to it without saying anything is like, it gives really meaning to the suffering. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm just turning it into, like, goodness, you know?
Right. You're flipping the script and changing the narrative on your own. Yeah. That's cool. Is there anything else that helps you cope when you have difficult days?
So lately, I've been trying to do a lot of reading lately, and there's this one thing I've started doing is that when I have these negative thoughts, I just try to observe the thoughts from, like, a perspective behind the thoughts, as opposed to becoming those thoughts, if that makes any sense. So it's like, I feel like as humans, there's things that will happen that kind of we try to become our emotions. So we'll have these negative thoughts and get sucked into that, and we'll be this negative person or negative thinking person. But if we can acknowledge that these thoughts are happening if we acknowledge these emotions and look at them from a perspective of, those are just my emotions, that's not actually who I am or what's actually happening, then you become mindful of that. And I think it gives less power to those negative emotions that want to take a hold of you and, you know, move your life that way.
Right.
That's something that I've been doing. It's kind of like, I think it falls in with, like, meditation and mindfulness of, like, not reacting totally emotionally, but, like, being in the now and reacting more practically, you know what I mean? From your true self, as opposed to these negative influences.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point about thoughts, negative thoughts. There's a phenomenon, and I can't remember what it's called. There's a phenomenon that's been studied in psychology where it's like everyone has these thoughts that are really terrible. Like, let's say, you know, a dog getting run over or you like killing someone that you love or something, and it's just like they can come anytime, but they don't have any meaning.
Right.
So it's like just these horrible things that we as people think about sometimes, and we don't even know where they come from, but they don't have any actual meaning for our desires.
Right. And I think that's another thing too that I recently learned is like, in one way you can have those thoughts and then you think, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I thinking this way? And you just make it worse. It's like you feel bad, and then you feel bad because you're feeling bad, and then you feel worse.
right. And so it's like spiral down.
Yeah, exactly. And then once I kind of realized, like, I read this one thing that I not word for word, but it was like, you're only human. And like, once you kind of realize that these thoughts are just because you're a human, like you're going to think about stuff and you're going to feel a certain way. But once you realize that it's not your fault, nothing's actually wrong with you. That's just, you're a human. And that kind of made it a little bit easier for me to like, you don't worsen it by your own judgment. You know what I mean?
Right.
You just let that be. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You basically let it go.
Yeah.
I think that's good advice. And if you could give any other additional advice to someone that's struggling with their mental health, what would you say?
Basically, well, for me, I know it's really hard when you're in that state to see anything positive. That's the whole point. That's the whole problem. But I know for me, it's like, there were times where I was really close to ending my life. And now there's been many times where I've experienced something or some form of joy or done something, and especially with music or whatever, where I'm like, wow, I'm glad that I just stayed and waited. You know what I mean? Because there's been many instances where I'm like, I'm glad that I did not do that when I was young, because I would have missed this. Like all the suffering is like, at some point, like you will reach something that you're like, wow, I'm glad I waited for this. You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing that I would say. And, you know, get help and talk to people about it, and don't try to deal with it yourself. And it will be better. You know what I mean?
Right.
And there's always people that will care.
Right.
And I know it's like, obviously like the whole thing is easier said than done, but I mean, I just want to say personally that I've been glad that I stayed around. So like, I'm sure if you stay around, there'll be something you'll be glad about, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. I think that's good advice. And as you said, it's easier said than done, but just talking about it is the first step.
Yeah, for sure.